Hello there, you're live on Tigray television. I am Tigrai. You may also join us live on our social media platforms, YouTube and Facebook. I'll now proceed to the details. Tigray Regional Health Bureau said on Monday that significant amount of medical supplies have entered Tigray following the peace agreement in South Africa. Head for the Bureau, Dr. Amani El-Haile, says his Bureau appreciates the promising start of delivering medical supplies into Tigray and called for unfettered access to satisfy the desperate needs on the ground. Abraga Rotensay has more.
Dr. Amani El-Haile, head of Tigray Regional Health Bureau, said significant amount of health supplies has entered Tigray following the peace agreement in South Africa despite the late beginning, and he called for unfettered access to satisfy the desperate needs on the ground.
Unfettered humanitarian aid did not come soon after the signing of the agreement. It took quite a while. So aid started coming in since November the 15th. So in the last 1 month, slowly there has been change, really encouraging change, I would say.
The Bureau head also gratified the Ethiopian Pharmaceutical Supply Agency for delivering health supplies for testing and treating HIV, TB and malaria.
Ethiopian Pharmaceutical Supply Agency also sent supplies mainly related to HIV, supplies that are needed to treat HIV, and also supplies needed to test individuals whether they have HIV or not, and supplies for tuberculosis and supplies for malaria. So we now have about medicines for malaria, which will enable us to treat around 34,000 patients with malaria. And supplies which enable us to test 30,000 people for malaria.
Dr. Emmanuel underscored that the demand for malaria drugs is huge as malaria outbreak is spiraling out of control in Tigray, and his bureau demands much more drugs to come.
Compared to the outbreak that's going on in Tigray right now, which is really out of our control, we need a lot of help. A lot of our people, in hundreds of thousands, are displaced everywhere. So if you add the numbers, they are in millions, they're everywhere. So the place where they are is in the open field, exposed to insects, and they are malnourished. We haven't done any malaria preventive activities for more than 2 years. So adding all that, our people are really in real danger. So we need a lot of help, much more than what we have already obtained.
Dr. Emmanuel also commended the UN agencies, international NGOs and others who contributed their share in supplying aid into Tigray so far, and expressed his hope that the supplies would continue coming in a bigger amount.
So ICRC is doing its level best. We really thank them a lot for all the supplies, the food items that they were able to bring to various health institutions within Tigray, and supplies for dialysis that friends of Tigray and diaspora people of Tigray origin who sent money and bought the supplies. And in terms of chronic diseases like diabetes, for patients with type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes patients that require insulin, Ethiopian Diabetes Association sent us 4,900 insulin vials together with other supplies like glucometer and what is needed to test sugar. And WHO also brought supplies to Tigray, about 357 sets, trauma and emergency surgery kits, and other kits as well, and supplies that are needed to take care of patients with COVID-19.
The Bureau head emphasized that medicines to treat cancer patients, mental health problems and neurological problems have not yet made into Tigray, and many are suffering a lot.
So there are also items that have never made it to Tigray so far. Patients with cancer, they have not received anything. If they need radiation therapy, they cannot go out of Tigray. And drugs for cancer treatment, they haven't been made available for more than 2 years now. So you can imagine the suffering, the pain, that those brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, children are going through. Drugs for chronic illnesses, non-communicable diseases like mental health issues, they are increasing in number. Neurologic problems and kidney problems.
According to the Bureau head, only 4 international organizations, including UN agencies, have delivered health supplies into Tigray, and he urged all international NGOs to take part in the delivery of health supplies into Tigray as the demand is extremely huge.
The number of NGOs that are bringing supplies into Tigray are fewer in number. We expect all of them to bring supplies to Tigray. So far, only 4 international organizations, including UN agencies, were able to bring health supplies to Tigray. To mention their names, ICRC, UNICEF, WHO, and UNFPA are the ones who brought drugs and supplies to Tigray. So we're now trying to deal with a problem that has been accumulating for more than 2 years. So it's so straightforward. The need is really, really huge.
Dr. Emmanuel reiterated that his bureau is grateful for all the supplies it has received so far, giving emphasis to further entry of unfettered supplies into Tigray.
So yes, we're glad that we have started receiving supplies, and we're so hopeful that this will increase in the future.
In related news, the Bureau also states that UNICEF has delivered therapeutic supplies and vaccines that would enable the Bureau to vaccinate 50,000 children. The Bureau adds that it is a huge relief for the health system in Tigray, as children, including newborns in the region, have been denied vaccinations for the past 2 years due to the war and subsequent siege. Again, Abraha Gabrasinsay has more.
Dr. Emmanuel Haile, head of Tigray Regional Health Bureau, said on Monday that UNICEF has delivered vaccines that would enable to vaccinate 50,000 children. Children, including newborns in Tigray, have been denied of vaccination for the past 2 years due to the war and the subsequent siege.
So UNICEF brought us vaccines. So we haven't had vaccines for quite a long time. Children, especially those living in the countryside, were beyond reach, and a lot of them were exposed to vaccine preventable diseases, and now we're glad that we have those supplies at hand. So we're expecting that we'll be able to vaccinate 50,000 children, and we need more for us to be able to reach those who are newly born and those who are even older than 2 years but have not been vaccinated for more than 2 years now.
The Bureau head said his Bureau has not started distributing vaccines because it requires serious planning, as there are health facilities that do not have refrigerators, and it requires a different way of reaching the target beneficiaries.
Vaccines, we haven't yet started distributing them because it requires serious planning. As you were mentioning earlier, there are health facilities that do not have refrigerators, so we need to come up with a different way of reaching those children living around that area. So one way is to do it in a certain locality, and the other way is to dispatch a group of health professionals with a cold box, putting the vaccines, and then going out to where the kids are and vaccinate them. So there are different options. So our experts in the Bureau, together with experts in UNICEF, they are deliberating on this issue, and they will come up with very clear plans. Our hope is we will be able to start providing vaccination service as of early next week, once all those things are cleared.
According to Dr. Emmanuel, his Bureau has also received therapeutic supplies that would help treat malnourished children, pregnant mothers, and lactating mothers. He said these supplies will be used at primary health care level, and distributions to the health centers have already begun.
And we also received supplies that we can use to treat children, pregnant mothers, and lactating mothers with malnutrition. And UNICEF also brought supplies that can be used at a primary healthcare level. So they have already started distributing those items.
You're watching Tigray television. 96 civilians were killed by Eritrean forces in the district of Igala, central Tigray. Administration office of the district stated that children, women, and mentally challenged people were among the dead. The office also noted that more than 17 primary and secondary schools, a college, and health centers have been looted, vandalized, and destroyed by Eritrean forces operating in the area. Saron Zaga reports.
On its recent report, AP uncovered Eritrean soldiers have continued to commit gruesome atrocities on civilian residents under their occupation in several parts of the region. According to several eyewitnesses, civilian residents who were sheltering in caves to escape the mass shelling in the area were gathered and summarily executed by Eritrean forces on October 26 of 2022. Administration office of the district of Igala said that the massacre took place in the vicinity of Adijaganu. According to the office, a total of 75 civilians, including 19 children, 50 women, and 4 religious fathers, were massacred in the area, and several others were injured. In total, more than 96 civilians have been killed in the district of Igala only, and 14 of them were children and elderly, who died out of starvation and lack of medical treatments as they were left behind with no one to look after them, while most of the residents fled the area to escape from the indiscriminate killings. The administration's office said that dozens of others were kidnapped by Eritrean forces operating in the area and are still missing. Other than the damage on human lives, the office said that Eritrean forces destroyed and damaged several infrastructures. The administration office also said that more than 17 schools, including 14 primary schools and the Garhu Sirnai College of Science and Technology, Samhal, Maihamato, and Erdijaganu health centers, and farming schools in the district were destroyed, vandalized, and their equipments were taken to Eritrea. The administration said that residents are living in darkness as Eritrean forces have destroyed the electricity infrastructures and looted equipment such as transformers, generators, and solar towers. The office also noted that so far, Eritrean forces have destroyed more than 120 civilian residential houses, 16 of which were burned down to ashes, and the rest were destroyed by bulldozers. More than 35,000 residents of the district have been displaced to neighboring towns of Bizzet and Intijo, and those still inside the district continue to suffer from starvation, lack of medication, extrajudicial killings, and sexual violence. The administration office of the district calls on the international community and all concerned bodies to pressurize the Eritrean government to withdraw its forces from the district and other occupied areas of Tigray.
Operation Rescue Tigray branch states its concern about children and staff members in Adwa, where Eritrean forces continue to commit atrocities. The branch, however, says it has been able to resume operations in its childcare centers in Maqala and Adigrat. Haile Gabro has the details.
General Manager of Operation Rescue Tigray Branch, Geitacho Tesfai, says his organization has been working mainly on community-based childcare projects for the past 22 years in Tigray, helping the abandoned children and persons with disability.
Operation Rescue Ethiopia is a community-based childcare project, and it was established 22 years ago here in Mekelle. And for the last 20 years, we have been working mainly with children, supporting the orphans, the abandoned ones, and also disabled people, especially visually impaired people. And also we have different programs, especially with development workers. And our main station we are working is here in Mekelle, Adwa, and Adigrat. And in the last 22 years, we have been able to help so many young people. So there are some young people who have been already passed with our services in Operation Rescue and graduated and now working all over the country, including even abroad. They went for scholarship and with many reasons. So our main working area in Ethiopia or in Tigray is now Mekelle, Adwa, and Adigrat.
He also said that Operation Rescue has been forced to stop providing its usual services due to the all-encompassing siege on one hand and the aerial bombardments on the other. However, now it has resumed its projects in Mekelle and Adigrat following the peace accord signed in South Africa.
A few months ago, it was so hard for the children to come to the center and get the services, the food, everything, because it was very difficult to make some gatherings. And we were already announced, we were declared that we were forced to stop the services due to the current situation. But right now, We are very glad that our government already make a peace. So the peace agreement made in Pretoria, it gives a big relief to our children because, as you know, starting from the COVID-19, and then again the war, almost 3 years our children are not going to school. So it was really very difficult as humanitarian organization to serve children in a situation like this. But we are glad that because of the peace agreement, now all our children, our staff, our people, even our back donors there, we got really a big relief. And we are right now at really waiting with the green light.
Getachew also expressed his grave concern regarding the current status of his children and staff members in Adwa as communication blackout continue to exist in the region.
Still now, we don't have any information about the children in Operation Rescue in Adwa, and even we don't have any information about the status of our staff in Adwa. So we would really hoping that very soon, just to open the road, to open the communication, we'll be enabled to serve our children.
He also called on the international community, the negotiation and monitoring team, and both governments to demonstrate a commitment in ending the 2-year horrific war in Tigray so that children would realize their dreams.
Everybody has to be honest to make this practical, because if we will get benefit from this, every one of us, and every one of us has to be committed to this one. So the negotiators, the international community, the Ethiopian government, the Tigray regional government, everybody has to be committed and work to it. And especially when you work with children like Operation Rescue, the children are the hope of tomorrow. So if these children will not get education today, if these children will not get enough food today, imagine what kind of world we will have, what kind of nation we will have tomorrow.
Operation Rescue had announced in late August that it was no longer able to support the children in need due to the fatal siege imposed on Tigray and the fear of airstrikes as well.
Eritrean forces remain in Tigrayan territories committing heinous crimes against civilians despite the signing of a peace deal in early November. Zalambesa and Eastern Tigray is of course another area still under the occupation of Eritrean forces. Our reporters traveled to Adigrat and spoke with IDPs from Zalambesa who haven't been able to go back home and still living in the camps with inadequate shelter and medical supplies. Ragai Gabriel has the details.
Eritrean troops are one of the main actors of the 2 years long devastating war on Tigray. Mesfin Take, one of the IDPs of Eastern Tigray, says, though a peace deal that demands the withdrawal of external forces from Tigray was signed between the governments of Tigray and Ethiopia, Eritrean forces are still continuing unspeakable abuses against civilians in Tigray.
ከባቢና ብቁምብላን በከቢድ መሳሪያታትን ያው ተዝነበረ ገዛው ተዓኒኡ በሪስኡ
Our houses are destroyed due to the heavy shelling of Eritrean troops. So we have lost all of our belongings. Now we have nothing at hand as we couldn't be able to collect our harvests. The Eritrean troops are the wildest creatures I have ever seen. They have no mercy for children, women, or even animals.
According to Mabratu Baraki, a father of 6 who displaced from Glomakhada district in eastern Tigray, the IDPs are currently leading a horrible life as they have been displaced empty-handed.
We were displaced to the city of Adigrat on September. I am a father of 6 and I was displaced from the town of Sobia. Currently, we were found in a very devastating situation as we couldn't be able to live in our own homes. All properties are looted by the enemy troops, so we are here suffering from different hardships.
Akhaza Hailai, one of the IDPs of Eastern Tigray, also says the IDPs are not still able to return back to their homes due to the presence of the Eritrean troops inside Tigray.
ሰላም ኮይኑ ይበሃለሎት ሰላም ንሕናታ ተኽሲ ኡሩታይ ጠጠው ብምባላ
We're glad the guns are silenced now. At least our mind is at peace for the time being. However, despite the signing of the peace deal, we're not still being able to return back to our home. Most of our society is still scattered in the caves at the wilderness as no one has anything on hand to rent a house at the cities.
The IDPs also called the international community to put pressure on the Eritrean government to withdraw from Tigray so they could be able to return home safely.
The enemy troops have still controlled our village, so we're calling on the international community to put pressure against the Eritrean government to withdraw from our land because that is the only way to achieve peace in Tigray.
እሞ ንሕና ንዓለም ሕብረተሰብ ንኢትዮጵያ ህዝብውን ዋላ ንኣፍሪካ ህዝብውን ንኩሉ
Our call is for the international community, for the people of Ethiopia and Africa. I hope they understand the atrocities the people of Tigray are enduring. Nowhere in the world and in no time during this millennium have such kind of unspeakable atrocities been committed except in Tigray. So, in order to achieve peace in Tigray, the spoilers of the peace deal, like the Eritrean troops, should be withdrawal from Tigray.
Peace and security analyst Mahari Tadele says holding perpetrators accountable is the only way for Ethiopia's problems to be solved. Appreciating what he called the peace accord a positive step, Mahari states his firm belief that the harder work remains ahead. Let's take a look. According to Dr. Mahari Tadele, an academic focused on peace and security, the agreement on ending the 2 years war that featured gang rape, a siege that caused deliberate starvation, and displacement of millions in Tigray has ignored accountability, stating the deal does little for the victims of the violence who want justice. He says war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in Tigray remain largely unaddressed. However, he says holding perpetrators accountable is the only way for Ethiopia's problem to be solved, stating that there have been early signs that there is no political will to support accountability. He adds International Commission of Human Rights experts on Ethiopia has been undermined systematically from the start. Dr. Mhari, in his points shared to Al Jazeera, suggests the International Commission of Human Rights experts on Ethiopia should be supported with all necessary funding and mandate extensions to carry out its work of investigation and documenting atrocities in Ethiopia. He notes the Ethiopian government has to be pressured into giving access to sites of interest and cooperate with the investigation. The doctor also shares his belief that ICC should be involved in the accountability process under major international pressure. He also says the AU could spearhead the accountability process by setting up a hybrid tribunal in another African country, as it did in 2015 for the prosecution of the former Chadian president, Hissène Habré, stating that doing this would ensure adherence to international fair trial standards and deflect pressure to maintain impunity for the war criminals. Dr. Mahari reiterates, accountability and justice are the powerful tools to prevent the repetition of atrocities and conflicts in the future. As to Dr. Mahari, the only way to guarantee lasting peace in Ethiopia is properly investigating atrocities and then starting an accountability process, stating that the Pretoria Peace Accord will not long hold without these steps. Dr. Mahari, in his article on Addis Standard, also noted that, so far, the Pretoria Peace Deal is lagging in civilian protection, aid provision, restoration of services, and withdrawal of forces. He says a successful transitional justice process in Tigray would not only solidify peace, but also pave the way for such processes in other parts of the country that have been in conflict. Dr. Mahari Tadele highlighted that so far 500,000 have died, tens of thousands sexually assaulted, over 2 million people displaced, and over 5 million put under siege and deliberate starvation since the onset of the war. December 12 marks Universal Health Coverage Day. The day has been celebrated for 8 years since 2014. This year it was celebrated with the theme, Build the World We Want, a Healthy Future for All. Meanwhile, Tigray celebrated the day with more than 85% of its health facilities destroyed and millions of its people suffering from a severe lack of medical supplies associated with the war and blockade. Our reporter Minori Mana has prepared the following report.
December 12, 2022 marked Universal Health Coverage Day, celebrated with a theme of Build the World We Want, a Healthy Future for All. In 2014, the Universal Health Coverage Coalition started to celebrate 12th December as the UHC Day to commemorate the date on which the UN General Assembly officially recognized the importance of UHC. Since then, the day has become the annual rallying point for the growing global movement of health for all. On 12th December 2017, UNGA proclaimed 12th December as the International Universal Health Coverage Day by resolution making it an official UN designated day. Universal health coverage comes with an idea that everyone everywhere should have access to quality and affordable health care as an essential priority for international development.
Communities and civil society can raise their voices for high quality health services, products and information.
Health for all is about delivering on the idea that all people are created equal.
Generations may not achieve a healthy future for all if some are left behind because of the injustice that our system have created.
Meanwhile, in Tigray, almost all health sectors went out of service due to destruction, as well as the siege-induced depletion of medical supplies. Health centers were shelled with heavy artilleries and were destroyed and looted. There is a clinic named Adakani. They have looted all its medical supplies, including its refrigerators, its solar panels, almost everything. But we are trying to provide service regardless.
There is a health center that had been struck with heavy artillery and burned down all the medical supplies that were with it. However, we're attempting to offer service in spite of that.
Several health experts had warned of the threatening crises in Tigray, including Director of the WHO, Dr. Tedros Adhanom, who had strictly warned of the alarming health emergency unfolding in the region.
The only thing we're asking is, can the world come back to its senses and uphold humanity? If it's the worst humanitarian crisis, and I'm saying nowhere on earth 6 million people are sealed off. Nowhere. From basic services, from their own money, from telecom, from food, from medicine. This is the worst disaster on earth as we speak.
Millions of people in Tigray, including children, mothers in labor, women who suffered brutal sexual violence, and civilians who were affected by the war, have been unable to access health care for 2 years now. Many with easily treatable illnesses were left to die. Today, witnessing malnourished children had become a regular precedent.
The amount of medical supplies that come to Tigray from these different non-governmental organizations in the time of even humanitarian truce, it was around 5.5% overall of the demand, of the year demand. That means 95% of the people will be without medication.
In addition, as a result of the total collapse of the health system in the region, health situations across IDP centers started to deteriorate drastically. IDPs have suffered enormous amounts of health challenges throughout the conflict, worsening through time as they were unable to access medical treatments.
Life there in the IDP sites is very worrying. They don't have anything to eat at all. So, almost anything. They are living in the forests, in the streets, by partners. Just you get them from some donors. Even those is what we get in the last 9 months is 6.7 of the year demand.
Even today, months into the peace agreement, little has changed in terms of access to medical care, and the grave danger remains looming. Regardless, many hope the objectives of the campaign, which include acknowledging and celebrating progress towards UHC in the world, raising awareness for the need to increase investment from governments to build sustainable and resilient health system that can deliver high-quality, affordable, people-centered, lifelong, participatory primary care for all, and emphasize the time is now to reprioritize UHC and for all health systems to work for everyone to prove true.
كافت ملء زيرو خينكا دو كابز بلنالو وان لو تتات يرأي له.
There are some improvements seen. It is definitely better than when we had no medical supplies at all. However, it should be known that it is still inadequate. We appreciate the initiatives, but we still demand unhindered and unfettered entry of humanitarian supplies.
On January 2022, the United States had removed Ethiopia from the list of countries in Africa under the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, following gross human rights violations on the part of the government in the war on Tigray. And now, through its diplomat in Addis Ababa, U.S. is asking Ethiopia to allow for the investigation of human rights abuses in northern Ethiopia before the country could be reinstated into the program. Ethiopia expected to be reinstated soon after the peace deal reached in South Africa, but the United States remains adamant in its stand. According to the reporter, the U.S. is urging Ethiopia to allow the entry of international human rights experts to investigate human rights abuses in Tigray. This is one of the 3 conditions Ambassador Tracy Jacobson told officials in Addis Ababa that Ethiopia must fulfill before it could benefit from the program. VIS Ethiopia states that it has started distributing food to IDPs in Mekelle. The NGO operating in the region, however, stated that it has no access to Adwa 40 days into the agreement. IDPs we found on the ground on their part say the aid they received is insufficient compared to the need. Abel Zagab has the report.
The crowd find it difficult to wait for an hour. Despite being starved for months, the IDPs lost patience until their names are called to receive wheat flour, nutritious food, and sanitation materials. Those who have taken their aid have gone calm, while the QE remain shouting. The emotions in and outside the Don Bosco compound are completely different.
We didn't receive any assistance since we've arrived in Ma'ala some 2 months ago. We're still in trouble. We're displaced twice. The aid we get today is very little, but it could sustain our lives for at least a week.
We all didn't expect this. I am happy. I'm a father to 6 children. This will help me to feed them for a few days. I want to thank the organization that facilitated this.
I have 6 children. The situation is very difficult. We're sheltered in a school that was supposed to teach children. I thank God for today's help. I also want to thank the organization. We want this to continue. We want peace. We want the basic services to be restored.
The distribution program was carried out by VIS Ethiopia, one of the NGOs currently working in Tigray. Regional coordinator says no matter the amount, his organization was able to give assistance to IDPs in Maqalla. However, there is completely no access to Adwa and other areas where VIS Ethiopia was supposed to reach to help IDPs in need.
Today we are distributing wheat flour, wash NFI, and some nutritious foods for kids under 5 years age. All in all, today we are distributing for about 1,500 individuals. We have some part of the NFI and wheat flour and these nutritious foods we are supposed to distribute to Adwa. However, due to the blockage, so far there is no access to Adwa. That's why we put them in here in the store. But had it been we got access, we are supposed to distribute in Adwa as well.
Last week, Director of WHO, Dr. Tedros Adhanom, said his organization didn't get unfettered access to Tigray and that there is thoroughly no access in areas controlled by the Eritrean troops.
Well, that ends today's news. Thank you for staying live on Tigray Television. Bye for now.